Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to our show. My name is Sarah Nicole Natter, your host for Fierce Feminine Finance. And today I have a very special guest I'd like to introduce you to. This is Tilisa Stubbs. She is a dedicated wife, mother of 2 teenagers, and the CEO of Her Investments. During the pandemic, Tilisa left the public school system, quit her full-time job as the director of accounting to start a real estate wholesaling business. After discovering the power of private money, Tilisa was able to raise her first $100,000 on a plane from a complete stranger, guys. So she now uses private money to fund all of her real estate purchases while providing amazing returns to regular, everyday, hardworking people. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Tilisa. We're lucky to have you.
No, you're welcome. I'm so honored, and just thank you for inviting me on the show. I'm happy to be here and just to share a little bit of my story today.
Yeah, so speaking of your story, tell us a little bit more about your background. You mentioned you were a director of accounting. I bet that's probably been pretty useful with what you do now. Is that right?
Oh my goodness. You know what? When I was in the actual weeds of my corporate accounting job, I just kept thinking like, why do I need this? Like if I were to go off on like my own, like do I really need to know how to reconcile a bank statement? And now that I'm a full-time entrepreneur and I've got transactions coming in one way and out the other, I'm like, oh goodness, thank God I know some of these skill sets. So I'm thankful. I am thankful. I don't love doing accounting, but I did it. I went to school for it because I knew that it was going to provide for my family. It was one of those things where it's like, you can either do what you really love and what you're passionate about, or you can do what you know is going to bring in good money. And when I was in college, I had taken a public speaking class and like a communications class, and I loved it. But I kept thinking like, there's no way there's like any money that I can make out of this. Like it was just like fun for me. And so I ended up opting to do accounting. And now I speak and I get paid for it. I'm just like, oh my God, Tilisa, like you should have just really just went right there. But you know what? Everything happens for a reason, right?
I totally believe you. And I can relate because when I was growing up, all I wanted was to just sit in a corner and read books all day. And I started writing books and I was like, I just want to be an author like Joe from Little Women. And everybody was like, that's not a real job. It's not a real job. So then I went and became a financial advisor. And guess what? One of my main sources of passive income now are my fantasy books. So I totally can relate.
So yeah, but I mean, I started off in accounting, and I would say that about 3 years ago, I had gotten to a point where me and my husband were like best friends. We've been together since the 8th grade, and so we've always been able to like spend a lot of time together. And it had gotten just to a point where I was working so much, and then he was a full-time truck driver, and we were like missing each other like every day. And so it was like, is this the life that we signed up for? You know, is this what we wanted? Like, yeah, we were able to buy our first property by the age of 25. Yeah, I got my MBA before I was 27. Like I was checking off all these boxes, but I'm like, are we happy? And that was like the underlining question. And the answer was no, we weren't happy. We had a daughter who was in high school at the time, and I'm not trying to tell all her business, but she was going through some depression and some other things that teenagers go through in high school that I just was not aware of. And I just thought to myself, you know what, I'm just not present. And my husband and I decided that we were going to both quit our corporate jobs. I was making 6 figures, he was making 6 figures, and we decided, you know what, we're going to watch YouTube and we're going to learn about real estate, because everybody says that if you really want to become wealthy, then you need to invest in real estate. And we got to watching a few YouTube videos, and there was this thing called wholesaling. And we were like, well, we need to get into real estate, but we really don't want to put like a whole lot of our money into this because we just quit our jobs, and we just sold our house, and we just put all of our money out of our 401k. So yeah, we kind of need to try to hold on to everything that we have. And so wholesaling was one of those things where it's like, you can get into wholesaling without using any of your own money, all this stuff. And so we were like, oh yeah, this is us. Like we can make these $20,000, $30,000 assignment fees. We just have to find an old property that's beat up and then find a buyer who wants to buy it and charge them a higher price than what we got it for. Easy peasy, right?
That's so cool. Oh my goodness, what a story. So tell us a little bit about, you really intrigued me when you talked about the whole plane ride. So will you explain to us, like, how did that even happen? How did this all come about?
Yeah, so the way that we led up to that is the wholesale business that we started. That business ended up draining us because everybody says that you can get into wholesaling without any of your own money. Well, we were paying for virtual assistants. We were paying to pull lists. We were paying to skip trays. We were paying for software. And so our money started to like disappear. And it got to the point where we didn't have the credit that we needed to be able to get a hard money loan. We didn't have the money that we needed to invest in real estate. And so I had to start getting creative. And I said, you know, what can we do so we can start buying real estate? And I came across, you know, private money. And at first I was so intimidated by private money. I was like, what is this? It just sounded like a bunch of like old men gathered in a room, like basically telling you if your investment was good or not. I don't know what I thought private money was. But when I found out that there were regular people who had money sitting in their bank, money sitting in their under their mattresses, money just sitting in their old retirement accounts, just sitting and collecting dust that they wanted to put to work, but they didn't know how to put it to work. That's what a private money lender was. And I was like, oh, so there's private money lenders everywhere. So I joined this mentorship, and the first week, the idea was to get out there and to like start finding potential private money lenders. And so I happened to be at the airport, and this is the story that everybody likes to hear. I happened to be at the airport, and I told myself, I said, you know what, I'm going to find one private money lender here at this airport before I have to board my flight. And I go and I'm there and I'm standing around. And every time I think about walking up to somebody and just starting a conversation, I would psych myself out and I would sit back down like, oh, nope, that person's not interested. You know, they're busy, or, you know, they're looking at their phone, or, you know, I'd make an excuse of why I didn't go talk to them. And so 3 hours had gone by and I hadn't talked to one single person. And it was time for us to board the flight, and they called my gate number. And I told myself, okay, when I get on this airplane, I have to talk to somebody. I have to find a private money lender. So I put my AirPods in and I was listening to this podcast while I'm standing in line waiting for my gate to be called. And the portion of the podcast I was listening to said something around the lines of, sometimes God will only give you a window of opportunity, and we can either choose to enter that window and watch our lives increase exceedingly and abundantly, or we can choose to allow that window to close, and it may open again in 5 to 10 years, but you're risking the idea that this may not be available to you for very much longer. And I decided I can't wait any longer. Like, this is it for me. So that was all I needed to hear. So I get on the plane and I'm walking to my seat, and I get to my number or whatever. And I look, and there's 2 large men, one of them sitting by the window seat and the other one sitting by the aisle seat. And I'm supposed to like shimmy my way in between these 2 guys and, you know, sit down. So anyways, I'm like, excuse me, I think that's my seat. And one of the guys like, oh, come on in, we don't bite. Rawr. And he does this little like rawr thing. And I'm like, oh God, these are the guys next to you. This is fantastic. And so, but you know, the guy over to my right, I started this conversation with him, older guy. And so we just started kind of talking back and forth. And I said, what do you do? He says, well, I'm an engineer. I build fiber optic cables. I've got fiber optic cables that are sitting down at the bottom of the Titanic. I've got fiber optic cables that are sitting on Mars. I'm just like, oh, wow, you're so interesting. And then he goes, and I also do fix and flips on the side. He says, but, you know, I'm 65 years old. I'm getting tired. I'm really looking for more passive ways to invest. And I said, well, you know, I've got this quadplex under contract right now, and I'm offering a 10% annualized interest return on the investor that's able to come with $100,000. And he says, oh, well, I've got $300,000 sitting in my 401k. How can I invest it with you? And I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. And
That's
it just
amazing.
flourished from there. Yeah.
What a story. Oh my goodness. So I want to unpack a little bit of what you said, Tilisa, because I know my audience, as they're watching this, they're going to just be like eating this up, right? So first of all, I want you to be totally honest with me, whether the answer is yes or no, but would you have ever in a million years talked to that person about doing a deal like that if you hadn't been in that mentorship program?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There was I didn't talk to people on the airplane. I was the kind of person that I'm going to get on the flight. I'm going to put my earpods in. I'm going to listen to a podcast. I'm going to read a book. Like, I'm going to try not to talk to anybody really. And so it got me to the point where I'm like, oh no, this is my job now. Like, I have to talk to people. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's so important to surround ourselves with people who are normalizing what it takes to become wealthy. Wouldn't you agree? Because, like you said, like me, I am a total introvert. When I get the opportunity, I just sit in a corner and I read fantasy novels, right? And I never, ever would have earned six figures, right? If I hadn't been willing to step outside that comfort zone. And I think a lot of us, we use being an introvert as an excuse to not chase our dream, but that's
Yeah.
one way to overcome that is to step into a group, step into a mentorship community, right? Step into some kind of community where you are surrounded by people who are normalizing doing this thing that is actually considered kind of socially awkward, which is to
Yeah.
talk to random people at an airport about investing in real estate with
No.
you. Right?
No, it is. It's really unorthodox. But the thing is, because I am an introvert, I think a lot of the times people will mistakenly think that I'm an extrovert because I know how to play the part, right? But being an introvert requires a lot of preparation. It requires a lot of rehearsing. So a lot of the conversations that I'm having with potential private money lenders, I've already had this conversation in the mirror with myself 20 other times, you know?
Yeah,
And so
totally.
there are those people who just naturally and organically can just have those conversations and have it not be awkward. I'm not that person. So everything that I say has to be rehearsed. You won't know it's rehearsed, but I will.
Totally, totally. The other thing you said that I think is really powerful is you were, well, actually, I'd love it if you wouldn't mind unpacking more the deal that you struck with him because you knew enough to know what to ask for. And I think that oftentimes when we're feeling awkward and we're feeling like we're not prepared to have that conversation, it's so much harder to get in front of that person. It's so much harder to manifest the right conversation if you don't know what to ask for, or you find yourself in a situation where the person does have $300,000 they could give you, but you don't know what to offer in return. So would you mind breaking down that first deal? Why did you offer him that? And why do you think he accepted it?
Yeah. So one of the things, like you were saying earlier, Sarah, the importance of being in a mentorship. I am surrounded constantly by other investors who are doing way more deals than I am. They're raising way more money than I am. And so when we got this deal under contract, we had several, I would say, advisors that we got input from about what we should charge, how long the term should be, what we really needed versus, what we should raise for contingencies. And so all of those things, because I hadn't done it before, I didn't know. I had to go to other people who could tell me from their experience. And so I would say that if you are a newer investor and you do want to start raising money, find somebody or maybe a few people that are already doing it. So that way you can just follow in their steps and you can ask them the questions along the way.
That is such great advice. Thank you. So my
Yeah.
next question for you is, obviously we don't all get on airplane flights every day. So nowadays, knowing what you know now, where do you go to find people like that? Do you network? Like where do you get in those rooms?
Yeah. So I think your audience is going to be very pleased to know that from the moment I walk outside of my door, every single person is a potential private money lender. And what I mean by that is the mailman is a potential private money lender. The lady at the grocery store is a potential private money lender. The guy at Home Depot is a potential private money lender. And the reason being is because sometimes what we try to do is we try to put in our minds, oh, I've got to find people who are very rich. Where do I find people that have really deep pockets? And we start to think, oh, doctors, how can I get in rooms with doctors? Oh, lawyers, how can I get in rooms with lawyers? But the reality of it is that Susie that works at the grocery store, her aunt may have just passed away and her aunt may have left her inheritance of $200,000, and she is frightened because she has no idea what to do with this money. And by me just having a conversation, I'm not pitching these people, I'm not going to them hungry for money. I'm having a conversation. And if I feel like there's some synergy, if I feel like, oh, wait, there's an opportunity for me to help you make money, and there's an opportunity for you to help me, then I will open up about what it is that I do. A lot of the times, I'm never asking people, can I borrow or can you lend me this? I say, this is what I do. I have this opportunity that pays this much in annualized interest. If you're interested, great. I've got about 70 other people who are also interested. So, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I love that because I have the same attitude, and I think it's uncommon unless you're surrounding yourself with other investors. It's just not common to think about the fact that there's money all around you, right? And I'm curious, Tilisa, so a lot of my audience, a large portion of them at least, have been through one of my online courses or programs. And I talk a lot about red flags and green flags for other investors when you're trying to partner with somebody on something, and also when you're finding private money, right? Like, but I'm always curious to hear what other investors look for in terms of red flags and green flags. So what are some red flags for you when you're talking to these, talking to someone about potentially loaning or lending to you? And what are some green flags, things that make you go like, I want this person?
Yeah. The way that I want for people to think about it is I look at any relationship, whether that's a potential private money lender, a seller, whatever. I look at that relationship as I would any other relationship that I want to grow and I want to flourish. So when I'm talking to a potential private money lender, if I sense that they have a lack of integrity, I will not work with you. If I sense that you have any sort of dishonesty, or our goals don't align, if you just seem like you're really, really about the money, and because one thing about when I buy properties and I'm raising money, we're not just buying properties and putting one family in these houses. We're housing about 9 women in each house that have either come from sex trafficking or domestic violence. And so there is a bigger purpose and a bigger cause for what we're doing. So anybody that I work with, they have to be in alignment and they have to have a certain heart posture. And so that's what I look for: integrity, honesty. If any of those things are lacking, that's a red flag for me. I don't want to work with you.
I love what you just said, heart posture. Because, yeah, right? Like when you do have money, you want to put your money where your heart is. And so if you find people whose heart is not in alignment with yours, probably that deal's going to go south eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it away from me. I don't want your money. And I tell Yeah.
people
all the time, because people, and once you start raising money and people start to know you as somebody who can put people's money to work, there are individuals who are going to just throw their money at you. Hey, Tilisa, I've got 500,000. Hey, I've got 100,000. And I'm always telling people, I will not take your money until I get to know you first. We will have at least 3 or 4 conversations back and forth before I will ever even send you any of my opportunities. Why? Because I don't know your character, and there's certain things that are going to come out just through a little bit of time that I'm not going to be able to determine after one interaction with you. I don't need a private money lender that's going to be calling me and saying, "Hey, Tilisa, what's up with that project? Hey, Tilisa, how come you didn't do this? Or how come I didn't get?"
Yeah,
I
don't
love
be
my
on my back.
Yeah, I
Right?
love my peace. And my private money lenders, they're my friends. They call me and check up on me. "Hey, Tilisa, you were just on my heart, girl. Just want to make sure that you're okay." Like, those are the kind of private money lenders that I have. They match me. They're in alignment with me and my energy.
I love that though, because when you have that attitude that private money lenders are all around you, you don't have a scarcity of funding, and so you can pick and choose who you work with. Whereas I think when people get into this mindset of money is scarce and funding is scarce and it's hard to find, they're going to latch onto the first person they find, which may not be that heart-centered person, right? So I think a
Exactly.
lot of what you're saying is the attitude you have to have. And so this kind of leads into my next question, which is, if for my audience members who are, again, they're kind of a little bit nervous, this is the first deal they'll have ever done, and they're going out to look for someone, what are some red flags that they want to avoid putting off? How can we show up as our best selves when we're looking for that opportunity?
Yeah, I would say that first and foremost, you need to know your deal like the back of your hand. And if you don't know the deal, and by what I mean by knowing the deal, you need to have underwritten that property. You need to know the market, know the area that you're investing in. Have a sense of the neighborhood, because those are all little things that a private money lender is not going to know to ask. But if you bring these things up to the forefront, they're going to believe in you and they're going to trust in you. And so, like, for instance, I might say something like, let's say, oh, okay, so this particular property, like I said, is going to be housed for women who are exiting sex trafficking and domestic violence. Typically, when I buy a property, I like it to be near public transportation so that they can, take a bus to work or whatever. This location, however, is in a really, really nice neighborhood that's near a golf course, and there isn't really a lot of public transportation over here, but it's going to be a great atmosphere for these women to really start to rebuild their lives and start to get that sense of vision and hope again. So, knowing that, and knowing that my private money lenders know that these people need to be able to get to work so that that way they can pay me, I'm going to let my private money lender know, hey, so in this area, public transportation is like almost non-existent. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be spending about $4,000 on getting us a house vehicle so that our house manager can transport the residents to and from work as needed. I just want to make sure that that's okay with you before we proceed. And so those are the things that you want to do. You want to give them as much of the negative information as possible, because if you try to paint this beautiful, bubbly picture of this amazing deal and it's going to do great, people start to think about, what's the catch?
Yeah.
Sounds too good. You know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah, when you're willing to be transparent about the bad things, they will not assume that there are bad things you aren't telling them about, right? And it builds that trust, it builds that honesty. And if you're asking them for transparency and honesty, your own willingness to demonstrate it. That is beautiful. That is really, really smart. Smart tip. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
let's say that I was going into this, and I'm picking this. I kind of wrote this question down at the end because of something you said at the beginning. But let's say I have a spouse who maybe isn't quite so on board with what I want to do. And obviously both of our funding is going to go into this. I'm curious if there were ever any moments when between you or your husband, either one of you was a little bit like, can we get out of this now? Or are you sure? How do you guys work through that and work together as a team, as a family, to do deals like this? And have you ever had to deal with that scenario where one of you wasn't quite feeling it anymore?
So I'll say this, and I know that everybody's, family dynamic and their business structure is a little different. From the onset of our relationship, like I said, we've been together since the 8th grade. I guess I've always just kind of been like the boss chick. I don't know. And so my husband is very much like, he's whatever it is that I say, he's just like, tell me what you need me to do. I've always made really good decisions for the family and for the business. And I think that makes him feel comfort in knowing that I've got the bulk of it done, and whatever I give him, it's going to be manageable enough for him to not be overwhelmed. So I do make a lot of the calls. I do, call a lot of the shots, and that works for our relationship. I'm not going to say that works for everybody, because typically it doesn't. So I don't know if that helped.
It does, though. I think one thing to unpack from that I'm unpacking from that is, know your strengths in your relationship, right? If one of you is better at bossing the other one around, because I'm the same way, I'm totally the boss chick in our relationship sometimes. But if that works for you, keep that dynamic going forward, right? And be willing to bend and flex with each other, right? Anyway, I threw that one at you kind of at the end there, and I appreciate you being willing to take it like a champ, but I think that that's something a lot of women are afraid of is, their husbands may be still in a corporate job, or now if they're going to quit and do something like this, he's going to have to support them. And it's like, how do you navigate that? So it's a question I get asked quite often of like, hey, my spouse isn't as supportive as yours. What do I do?
Yeah. And I know, and it's even harder when, especially in the beginning, when you're not really seeing the fruits of your labor, like you're putting in all this work and your spouse sees like there's all this time and dedication and money being spent, and they're not seeing any money coming in. And so, the question, the eyebrows kind of start raising, like, are you sure you don't need to go back to work? And it's like, no, I think we got to give it a little bit more time.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, when you guys started, was there a back out plan? Was there a plan of, okay, if this doesn't work by month 6 or month 12 or month 18, was there a plan B? I'm just curious.
There was never a plan B. We had plan A, and if plan A didn't work, that was just going to be it. Our plan A was, we're going to build wealth. That was plan A, and we're going to build wealth through real estate. However means we needed to take to get there, however many losses or failures or times we fell flat on our face, or the time we had to file for bankruptcy, or the time we thought we were going to be evicted, or the time my husband had to start driving for Uber and Lyft because we didn't know if we were going to be able to feed our kids. All of those times, first of all, I wouldn't take it back for anything, but all of those times just helped us to grow and to help us to be where we are now, where, okay, now we can make better decisions. We can trust ourselves to make the right decisions, because we've made the wrong decisions so many times that now we know what not to do. And so if we just do the opposite of what got us here, then we will always make it. Yeah, we're going to fall on our butts. That's just a part of it. Anything that's worthwhile, you're going to fail. But I mean, this is our kids' legacy. This is our grandkids' legacy. So we'll work at this until the day we die, if that's as long as it takes.
That is amazing. Well, Tilisa, thank you so much for coming on the show today. The nuggets you have dropped, I am already so excited to share this with my audience. So would you mind sharing with us now, if some of my audience, having listened to this and watched this show, are going, I can't wait to work with her, what is the best next natural step for them?
Yeah, so they can go to my website. It's very simple, herinvestments.org. And from there, they can book a call with me, a 15-minute call, whether they want to become a private money lender and they want me to put their money to work, or they just want to get some coaching on, okay, Tilisa, how do I find the deal? How do I raise the money for the deal? How do I find the residents to fill up the house? If they just kind of want me to walk them through that, we can have a conversation about what that consultation fee looks like. But I mean, no matter what you guys need, I think that I can help you guys figure it out.
Thank you so much. I am so appreciative for you coming on today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. All right.